Hey, hello. In this occasion, I'm going to explain you a little about what is pragmatic. Pragmatics, we can say, is the study of how concepts affect meaning, such as how sentences are interpreted in certain situations, or interpretation of linguistic meaning in context. The linguistic context of discourse that precede a sentence to be interpreted in situational context is knowledge about the world, right? For example, in the following sentence, let me see. For example, the kings eaten already and surprisingly. So they are hungry, and linguistic contexts help to interpret the second sentence depending on what the first sentence says. In this case, the situational context help to interpret the second sentence because it is common knowledge that humans are not usually hungry after eating, right? So we have several contexts in pragmatic. We have the physical context, linguistic context, social context, and epistemic. So remember that the role of context or context is the linguistic environment in which a word is used. The context clearly limits our range of possible interpretation we might have for a word. So, in the case of dexes are practically words in our language that can be interpreted at all if we don't know the context, especially the physical context of the speaker. For example, you have to bring it back tomorrow because she isn't here today. This is an example of this point in pragmatic. As we know, dexis practically, in other words, means pointing via language. Speaker and listeners can interpret some word or only thanks to the physical context. We have several types of dexis. In this case, we have the person dexis. For example, I, you, him, it, then, among other. Time dexis, now, then, tomorrow, last week, in this case, period of time. Place dexis, here, there, beyond. And we have other dexis that these do these. In the pragmatic, also there are reference and inference. In the case of reference is practically an act in which a speaker or writer use linguistic form to enable a listener or reader to identify something. Another word is the words we use to identify things. In discussing indexes, we assume that the use of word to refer to people and things was a simple trivial matter. However, words themselves don't refer to anything. People refer. Okay. Reference in act in which a speaker or writer use a linguistic form to enable listening or reading to identify something, how I said. These linguistic forms are called referring expression. For example, they can be proper nouns. In this case, for example, Brazilian, Mr. Martinez, Mr. Faisal, etc. And we have also noun phrases. For example, the city, the lecturer, etc. We have noun phrases. In this case, would be a place, a man, the car, the cat. And we have also pronouns. Pronouns, as we know, I, you, we, him, her, it, etc. The choice of one type of reference expression rather than another seems to be based to a large extent on what the speaker assumes and the listener already knows. On the other hand, we have inference is connecting pure knowledge to text-based information to create meaning beyond what is directly stated, right? So we can say that the role of inference in communication is to allow the listener to identify correctly which particular entity the speaker is referring to. We can even use both expressions related on the listener's ability to infer what is the referent that we have in mind. Listener make inference about what is saying in order to arrive at an interpretation of the speaker's intended meaning. The choice of one type of inferring expression rather than another seems to be based on what the speaker assumes the listener already knows. For example, in this next sentence, let me see. I enjoy listening to, I don't know, I enjoy listening to Mana. The Harriet has to infer that the name of museum is, in this case, Mana, can be used to identify the song. Well, to conclude, successful reference means that an intention was recognized via inference, indicating a kind of sharing knowledge and hence social connection.